It's a Good Vibrations episode today, which ties in with the themes in my ongoing God solo video series. So there'll be more triggers than in a Smith& Wesson factory with this one. And I've had many private conversations with my guest today about these matters, and he's currently researching and writing a book which gets into these subjects, as well as having delivered some live presentations. So we figured it was about time we got him on to do a podcast. So it's welcome to Nathan Lucius. Welcome, brother.
Thanks very much, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. So you haven't been tarred and feathered or stoned in the street just yet, then?
Not just yet, but I figured I might draw on a little bit of hate with this.
Well,
But
we'll give it today's show and see what happens to you.
well, it's as you've pointed out many times, mate, that the Christians tend to get rather triggered very easily these days, and it seems to be a unique character trait. So hopefully we can figure that out at some point.
Well, you're right, because today's subjects will go down like a consignment of anvils with some. Uh, I'm sure others will find the information fascinating, challenging, and hopefully ultimately empowering, which is our aim behind doing this show. But I think we probably need to get some disclaimers out of the way before we get going. I know you
Mm.
do this with your live talks. So just to be clear at the outset, we're not doing this show to deliberately piss off any individuals or groups. That's not our intention. We accept that it's almost certainly going to happen in some quarters. And if people do take offense at what we've got to say here, well. Everything that we're offering is being backed up with evidence. It's factual. People can go out and check this stuff for themselves. The information is all self-evident, right? So, I don't know if you want to cover the disclaimers that you normally do in your live
Yeah,
talks.
well, I will do. I'll try and be nice for this one because, as we've both found, you can't really cover this subject without making a few enemies and offending the perpetually perplexed. So, if you can see the screen there, so this is not an attack on any particular individual. In fact, it's not an attack on any individual at all. It's an analysis of a subject, and that's it. Right. So it's not an attack on God, the creator of all things. So you and I, Mark, I think we've got an entirely different outlook on what God is compared to what we are told that it is throughout history. So, all this anthropomorphized God, I discount it completely. I don't accept any religious account of God whatsoever. I do accept that there is a creator, and I know that the word grand design, the intelligent design idea triggers a few people on the other side as well. But when you look around at things like phi ratio and DNA, all the intricacies of the universe and life, then we do see a very intelligent design there. So that being said, this is not an attack on Christ. A lot of people think that Jesus and Christ are the same thing because of 2,000 years of indoctrination and misinformation. But again, Christ and Chrism is entirely separate. And
Christ consciousness, right?
it is, yeah. Well, I mean, it's an alchemical biological process that goes on within the body. So this is when people
Right.
talk about being spiritually awake, what we're really talking about here is a process that some people go through, and it is an extremely rare process of Kundalini. So I think you've covered that many times on your show already.
Yeah.
Which it activates your chakra points within your body. So I've just offended a few with that one alone. And it essentially, when it gets to your pineal gland, it activates it. You've got some kind of enlightenment going on, some kind of spiritual enlightenment. As far as I'm aware, I've never had that, but you've got to wonder these days.
No, I'm still working on that one myself.
Well, it's a little bit difficult because apparently you're supposed to be pure in body and mind. So that's that's probably where it's causing a
Yeah,
few
probably
problems.
too many beers on my part.
Well, any kind of toxin. Apparently, you're not allowed to uh, have any impurities whatsoever. So you have to, you've got to abstain from sex, you've got to abstain from meat, you've got to abstain from, any kind of blood product or any kind of impure toxin, drugs, you name it. All of that has to be out your system for the duration of the process, which can take, well, it can take a lifetime realistically, but the process can happen within the space of a month, all things being good. But again, it's one, people have practiced this for years and years and years of their life and still come nowhere near. And then you hear of other people who will have spontaneous Kundalini just because they were laying in bed thinking of chocolate or something,
Right.
um, So I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
if you want to lose the sex part of it, just get married. That's that one fixed.
Well, yeah. Or live in 2024 when dating seems to be an illegal act and sex is only something that happens on the internet, isn't it? I don't know.
Well, that's that part sorted anyway.
So, if we're moving on, right? Okay, so the second part of the disclaimer, and stop me if I yap on, by the way, just to say, oi, on with it. So this is an attack on hypocrisy. So what I'm finding with Christians is that, and bearing in mind here, I've lost a lot of Christian friends over these kind of discussions. The problem that we have is that they think that they are part of a belief system, part of a religion, without fully comprehending what they're agreeing to. Like, they've not read the terms and conditions of their own religion effectively. Most of the Christians that I've come across, especially in the last 10 years, have never even read the Bible. You'll get one or two that have said, oh, well, I've read the Gospel of Luke or the Gospel of Matthew. And in the odd occasion, you'll get, oh, well, I've read Genesis. So, yeah, but all those books are different. And every single one of them is contradictory. Okay, so effectively, Christianity is still a Jewish religion that's not recognized by Jews. And you say that to a Christian, and of course, there's trigger point number one. They're going to get highly offended. But I mean, we can come to that. There's plenty of references within the New Testament to say that Jesus didn't come to replace the law or make a new law or a covenant with God. He's come to reinforce the old covenant, and it's very clearly set out. Anyway, back to it. Sorry, mate. Crucial analysis of the Bible, hopefully, but I think we're going to skip most of that today. And a critique of what is known as God, Yahweh, or Jehovah. So again, this is not an attack on the God of all creation. This is a God on a specific entity or entities referred to as God within the biblical account. There you go. That's a mouthful.
Sure. And people often ask, why are you picking on Christianity?
Yes.
I've got this as well in the videos I've been doing. Why are you just singling out this religion? Well, in your case, as you pointed out in your presentation, the short answer is familiarity, because you were raised as a Christian, whatever that meant. So you know a thing or two about what they're instructed to believe. If we'd grown up in the Middle East, we might be questioning Islam. But it just happens that in this part of the world, Christianity is the dominant religion. It's one with which we're both familiar, at least the traditional doctrines of it. So that's why we're talking about it. As we said at the start, we're not trying to offend anyone. And one observation I've made is that Christians tend to get more offended than any other religious group. I've had no pissed off Muslims, Buddhists, Jews, or anything else moan at me about my videos. So perhaps we should start with the way that God is presented in the Old and New Testaments of the Bible, respectively. So contemporary Christians are taught that this entity is the original God of creation, is singular, and it's the same entity appearing throughout the entire Bible. But straight away, we run into some problems here, because from the way he behaves in the Old and New Testaments, it would appear that God is, at the very least, bipolar or schizophrenic. So where do we even start with this one?
Well, I'd love to say at the beginning, but then they'll get all excited about Genesis. So actually, let's start with Genesis, shall we? So, I mean, this is a whopping piece of work, and I'm not the first person to critique this at all. I'm not even professional at this. This is just my stab at looking at it, assessing it, looking at the contradictions, and then comparing it with what people think it is. Anyway, can I start with a quote from Lex Luthor of all people, from one of the Batman Superman movies, which is this: "If God is all powerful, he cannot be all good, and if he is all good, then he cannot be all powerful." And the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, he's got a number of names, but obviously Yahweh, Jehovah is the one that's been accepted and syncretized, and that's the one we have these days. He certainly claims to be all powerful, but he's sure as hell not all good. And so I've got some examples here that will hopefully prove that. One of my slides, it's showing up all right, I take it. So yeah,
it is, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the slides that I've got here is that somebody on YouTube, and I know it says, lazy research. Actually, I've cross-referenced a lot of this. So this is not just me taking someone else's work. This is me following up what somebody else has said. And they did a kill count within the Bible. from Jehovah or Yahweh. And it turns out that that particular entity, that God, is responsible for over 24 million deaths. And when you compare that to tyrants in the 20th century alone, they've got a bit of catching up to do, it would seem.
That's
Stalin
24
perhaps being
million
exception.
human deaths. So that's not counting animals as well.
That's human deaths. I mean, the amount of animal slaughter in the Bible is horrendous. I mean, God
Exactly.
tends to have a particular taste for the burning flesh or burning fat. He loves to savor the smell of it and the taste of it. And I mean,
Yeah.
we're told that God is a non-physical entity, but yet he's got a sense of smell and he really enjoys the taste of meat. So what does that tell us?
He enjoys a fry up in the mornings.
I can't say I blame him. But the amount of slaughter that goes on, I would say it was unjustified, especially as they tend to, if you've got a pure animal or one that's very rare, so you've got a pure white bull or a pure white deer or something like that, that's exactly the kind of animal that they'll look for sacrifice. In another account, you've got the requirement that Yahweh wants 10 baby lambs, a year old, so he wants to slaughter innocent lambs. So much for being the shepherd of God. So, yeah, where would you like to go from here? Because we've got a ton of stuff to look into.
Sure. Well, you've got the question there, is Yahweh the God of all creation?
Mm,
So, how about we consider whether the stories in the Old Testament are consistent with an idea which is gaining a lot of traction in these times,
mm,
that we're not actually living in original creation, but in
right.
a realm
Yeah.
which has been constructed by some lesser being, not the original God. So
Mm,
that's where Yahweh might come in. It might be this lesser being.
yeah.
And is it possible that the so called creation story in Genesis might actually be describing how this abominable realm in which we've seemingly been forced to incarnate,
Yeah.
given that none of us arrived with any memory of having agreed to it, was first
Mm.
constructed by a being or beings who are different to the original God of creation? Do you think that's a fair take on what's going on in Genesis?
Well, I think it's more than a fair take. So my problem with that is that obviously Genesis is a mishmash of different accounts from different periods of time, right? So we've got different authors, different schools of authors that have collectively combined or syncretized many gods into one God. Okay, so first of all, that's your initial problem. So the idea that Yahweh is the original creator God or the Demiurge of the Gnostics, for which we've got a couple of examples there. In fact, if you look on the screen there, you'll see a lion-headed serpent with kind of sun symbolism around its head. That's the Gnostic interpretation of the Demiurge, who in Gnostic accounts was born to the aeon or this superior intelligence called Sophia, and the idea was that she was supposed to have a counterpart, sort of like the masculine feminine counterpart, to create the perfect creation, and something went wrong, so she kind of went ahead without the counterpart and created the offspring, which is the Demiurge, who then proceeded to create the world. Unfortunately, he's described as some kind of malformed god, with a bit of a malevolent psychopathic streak, and apparently he's jealous. I mean, who's he jealous of? Um, the
Hmm?
archons, perhaps. So the archons are the seven other co-creators or co-rulers alongside Yahweh. Again, this is going by the Jewish account. This is not going by the historical account. There's been many gods and creation stories prior to the book of Genesis or the Bible, most of which come from Mesopotamia, Akkad, Sumer, places like this. In fact, this is where we get the biblical accounts from. But yeah, there's definitely a malevolent streak about the Demiurge, which I think it was the Essenes who were kind of trying to point this out. Um, well, they were wiped out because of it. Many times the Gnostics have come back into uh, civilization only to find themselves wiped out by the local Christian armies, or we have many accounts of that. So, is Yahweh the God of all creation? No, history tells us definitely not. Is Yahweh evil? Well, if we judge evil by behaviors and acts committed, then yes, absolutely. Or if he's not evil, then we have to ask if God is incompetent, inept, or stupid. And that's going to offend people. Again, sorry, but you've got to ask the question, he's either evil deliberately or he's inept and he's just kind of trying to figure it out.
Right.
Which one are we going to go for?
Fair question.
Yeah. So do you want me to move on to the next? Oh, actually, before I do, just a side note there. So Satan, we're told that Satan's the bad guy of the Bible, the opposer, the oppressor, the one that goes against, the rebel. And yet his kill count is 10 in the Bible. And most of that occurs, in fact, I think all of that occurs in the book of Job, where God and Job basically have a little discussion about how faithful Job is to God, and he's supposed to be this perfect man. And the devil says, well, I'd like to test your theory about that, El Yahweh, and see how that goes. So anyway, Yahweh agrees that the devil or Satan can then do whatever he pleases as long as he doesn't kill Job. And he proceeds to, cause misery, suffering, disease, illness, death, loses his family members, loses his livestock, loses his house, becomes very ill. That doesn't seem like a very benevolent thing to do.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Seems that way, doesn't it? I think you and I can both attest to that one personally, because we've been through the mill a
The
few
more
times.
good you try and do, the more suffering you reap. Yep, there's a
Yeah.
direct correlation there.
Again, how the hell does that work? I mean, to say that we're being tested, what the hell are we being tested for exactly? Have we not passed the test? If we're being tested on benevolence or goodness, and we keep being pushed to the absolute limit, eventually we're going to snap. We do things that we regret, that the mistakes, or they're an act of passion or anger, or what's the point here? What are we supposed to be learning? And then, as many have pointed out, including yourself, we're told that when we die, our memories are wiped and back in the mill we go. So what can we learn from that? How can we improve if we don't know what we did in the previous incarnation?
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay. So, who is the God of the Bible? So let's take a look at this. So we've got a few examples here. El, which again comes back from Canaanite religion and Mesopotamian religion. Not entirely benevolent, not necessarily evil, but then we cross that with Baal, who was the storm god, the war god. So this is the god that we refer to when we're talking about human sacrifice. This is the one primarily that is responsible for that in the Bible, that we get that tradition from. Enki, who was the brother of Enlil, or El, it was basically a merger of the two gods. Enki, the god of the waters below, and Enlil, the god of the waters above. Yahweh, Jehovah, Eloi, Adonai, and Jesus, which I would dispute. Jesus and God are completely different entities, but there you go. Following on from that, what if I told you that the God of the Bible, in Gnostic Demiurge tradition, was actually the devil himself? So, the deceiver, the one who's got all the power, and likes to play around with it. So
Wouldn't surprise me these days if you did tell me that.
Well, incidentally, right. So the slide I've just put on the screen now. So I know David Icke's particularly, he's covered this quite a lot, referring Saturn to the god of the world. He's kind of this energy, this frequency, this malevolent presence within the universe. Somehow has this influence over the world events. El, as in El from the Elohim, which was a pantheon of gods, is equatable to Saturn. It's got a direct lineage to the planet Saturn, so it's got this malevolent persona, this characteristic. This is something that we're looking at as a malevolent, evil, petulant, jealous entity that deceives the whole world.
Jordan Maxwell used to talk about that, didn't he? About how the L prefix denotes that something comes from this entity, such as the word elite.
Yes.
And elevate and all these other words with EL as a
elected, select, Yeah, I mean, it's Jordan Maxwell, bless him. I mean, he didn't exactly have a good time putting all this into the world, but you can cross-reference what he said, a lot of it. Just there's certain authors out there who, Jordan Maxwell had this thing about the Son of God being, the quite literal sun in the sky, and of course that offends people. But yet, when you read the Bible, there's a clear distinction that actually shows him to be the sun. It's an allegorical account of the sun.
Sure. We'll get on to that. I want to cover the New Testament as we go on.
Yeah, well, that'll come a little bit later. Shall we go into the wars that have caused a lot of bloodshed, misery, and suffering throughout the Christian period as well?
Well, yeah, we don't have to go into the fine detail of each one, but you've got quite a
Yeah,
list there, so I'm sure people get the gist.
yeah. Well, there's a hell of a list, especially. I mean, if we take the Crusades, I mean that's the obvious account. Dieu le veut, which God wills it. That was kind of the rallying cry throughout the Crusades. Let's go and kill anyone that stands in our path to reclaim the Holy Land for our God. We want to put it back in Christian hands and take it off the existing inhabitants. God wills it, and of course that stirs up a fervor. And once you've got into that kind of mode, you just slaughter everything in front of you, including your allies if they get in your way. So yeah, there's a fair few wars. The Inquisition as well. I mean, that's not necessarily war, but the Inquisition that spread across Europe, lasting pretty much 600 to 800 years, was just one massive excuse to slaughter, burn, execute, torture anybody who went against the narrative.
Yeah.
Frightening times. Another example of that would be the 30 Years' War, which some accounts say that there's 5 million deaths were caused by this war of religion that was almost as bad as the First and Second World Wars in magnitude. So there's plenty of examples of Christianity spreading its love and compassion throughout the world and leaving a trail of blood in its wake.
Yeah, no
Um,
shortage.
well, another one, the discovery of the Americas in 1492. I mean, the Spanish and the Christians, they went in there and slaughtered the place. If they didn't slaughter it with a sword or cannons and gunpowder, they brought disease in. And I think that was deliberate as well, just to completely eradicate the existing inhabitants, to take over the land in the name of God.
There's
So
a
at least they're
trend emerging
consistent.
here.
Yes, exactly. I mean, they are consistent. Let's give them that.
Well, yeah,
Um,
just
what
keeps
else can you
repeating
say?
itself. And actually, we're not aware of any period in recorded human history where there hasn't been war, suffering, misery, famine, death, turmoil, chaos. Not
Yeah,
one. There's not one period that you can point to where there's any documented evidence to say that everything was fine and dandy. So if we really
yeah.
do live in a world of duality, as we're told we do in certain sort of more new age belief systems, where
Hmm.
everything's balanced out and you can't
Hmm.
have good without there being evil, why does everything seem to be so unfairly weighted on the side of evil? You know what I mean?
That's kind of the question of the century, isn't it? Because
It's
I
not
don't,
balanced.
not the way that we'd like it. And again, mate, you and I have been through the new age thing, um, almost to the point of embarrassment, actually, because some of the stuff that we've gone for. I mean, the whole manifestation thing. I mean, that's just a joke. Somebody
Yeah,
put that together, and they're laughing at us for that one.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I fell for that
just
one.
it's a painful experience coming out of
I
it,
fell for it, but I can never make it work.
mate. Your cafe analogy is the best I've ever seen. It's flawless. I mean, in terms of pointing out the hypocrisy of it and the silliness of it. But again, so I've just offended the new ages. Again, no offense personally, but wow.
Well,
Um,
we don't discriminate.
well,
We offend everyone.
I was going to say we offend everyone equally, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah,
rule.
right. Yeah.
But Mark, no, in terms of world history or what we think we know of world history, yeah, it's just one big giant bloodbath. Um, it was, according to the Genesis account, we're supposed to be the caretakers, what's the word for it?
Curators,
Yeah,
custodians.
yeah. We're supposed to look after this place, take care of it, nurture and
Yeah.
protect. And yet we slaughter everything in our path. If there's a forest there, we burn it down. If there's a mountain, we dig into it and take its riches and its natural materials and build from it. I'm not saying that's entirely wrong, but it just seems that humans, wherever they go, whatever they do, they just destroy. That's not a compassionate, benevolent creation, is it? Really, if we look at it, as
Mhm.
above, so below. So if we do come from this Yahweh entity, which again I very, very much dispute, then at least we are consistent with the behaviors of that entity.
Mm. So the
Okay.
Old Testament starts to read like a horror story, actually. There's the most horrific tortures and outcomes that anyone could ever imagine, which appear on those pages.
Mm.
And it doesn't exactly fill the reader full of hope and joy and lift their spirits.
To the credit of the authors of the Bible, notice I said authors, many, 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 many. It's a very good read. I mean, it's if you're bored one Sunday afternoon, you think, oh, I need a bit of violence and a bit of sex, a bit of divine intervention, some cruelty, a lot of war. Yeah, pick up the Bible, start with Solomon, and not Solomon. Start with Samuel, Chronicles, Kings. It's fascinating reading.
Like a hell
Not
of a movie.
necessarily encouraging and optimistic though.
Yeah.
So yeah. So would you like me to give you a couple of examples that I've come across for this?
Yeah, a couple more
I mean,
good ones there.
okay. So God condones slavery and promotes punishments. The example provided is Exodus 21, 20 to 21. So anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished. So the ironic part of that is uh, it's not an attack against slavery, it's an attack against the way that you treat your slaves. So in other words, slavery, according to the Bible, the Old Testament, is condoned. It's acceptable, but you just got to treat your slaves nicely. Leviticus, again, another example, Leviticus 24, 44 to 46, speaking about how you should treat and buy your slaves. Effectively treating human beings as property. I mean, look at the 21st century, start as you mean to go on, right? Noah builds an altar to his God to offer burnt offerings, and he's not the only one. So I can do a little bit of a quote here from Genesis 8:20. Noah builded an altar unto the Lord. This is using the language in the Bible, so it's not my grammar. And took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and ordered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled the sweet savour, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, neither will I again smite any more anything living as I have done. The problem with that is that was written in Genesis. That's the first book of the Bible, and the slaughter, the mass slaughter, continued regardless. So God seems to have either forgotten his promise or he's had a personality change.
Right.
Make of that what you will. God demands plenty of burnt offerings in the Bibles. Again, if anyone wants to take a photograph or a screenshot when it comes up on the YouTube channel to look at the references provided, please go cross-reference this. It's all there. It doesn't matter what version of the Bible you use. Some of the wording is different, but you can clearly see that the message is he likes burnt offerings and sacrifices, which comes from the god Baal. That's a Baal-esque personality trait. Moses, oh my God, I mean, the idea of the Exodus. So we're told in Moses' account that he took his people out of Israel because they were being mistreated at the hands of Pharaoh, only to take them to the wilderness, which was still under Egyptian occupation at the time in Sinai. Traveled around for 40 years and still continued to worship the golden calf or the Apis bull, if from the Egyptian civilization. And 40 years later, it's said that not one single adult from the Exodus managed to step foot into the promised land. And the promises that were made by God and Moses tend to have been completely ignored. So, there's a lot of slaughter in and of the survivors of that account anyway. And that's done by the very God that saves them. So there's a few contradictions there.
Just a few.
Yeah, just a few. So yeah, stop me if you've got any questions. I'll try and answer them as best I can.
Sure.
There's
Well,
just so much. There's
I've
so
got
much here.
some side notes,
Please, yeah, carry
some
on,
side
mate.
questions. I mean, if this is a realm specially constructed to cultivate pain and suffering, which I personally believe it to be,
Seems that
it
way.
would explain a lot. It would explain what you've just outlined there, which
Yeah.
has been going on throughout recorded human history. But I wonder where it leaves concepts which we might have embraced a few years ago and placed some stock in, like karma and natural law. So those systems teach that you get out what you put in, consequentialism, cause and
Ooh.
effect. So if you put good work into the world and try and stand in right action and live according to a moral code, according to the teachings of karma and natural law, you'll reap the rightful consequences of those actions. On the other hand, if you're a murderer, rapist, genocider, then you reap appropriate consequences for those behaviors, which presumably would be really bad. But if we look around us at the evidence available to us, Genociders, murderers, rapists seem to get away with it, literally.
Constantly.
We don't see them reaping any kind of punishment that we can
Mm.
measure for ourselves. And in the meantime, the likes of us can try and do good work and stand in right action. And we know from personal experience what happens to us when we do that,
Hmm.
as many other individuals have discovered through history as well. So, you know, these are concepts which would be the products of a benevolent creator, things like karma and appropriate consequence. But
Yeah.
all the evidence suggests that that's not what we have.
No.
So, do we need to rethink our uh, conception of things like karma, natural law?
Okay, I'll start with the natural law part because obviously I'm still an advocate of natural law. I don't actually see any particular contradictions there, even with the cause and effect or consequentialism. I don't find it problematic because if you look at it from a neutral, objective perspective, I suppose almost in an atheistic way, if you just look at it as a cold, hard reality, and so therefore anything that happens is just going to have a series of consequences anyway, regardless of human behavior or human thoughts and laws and things like that. So I do still adhere to the idea of natural law, specifically Hermeticism. In terms of reaping what you sow, okay, so biblically, there's many accounts if you go back through the Old Testament where generations upon generations of people have been condemned to punishment because of the actions of their forefathers, or somebody's done something that's offended God, and so therefore he's reacted by saying, right, well, I will oppress your generations for 10 generations over. So maybe,
Right.
Mark, we're just somehow one of the belated offspring of these people that have been offensive to God, which to me doesn't really sound very fair. I mean, I'm not responsible for the actions of my father or forefathers or anything like that.
Right.
How is that my fault? How is that your fault? So
Exactly.
okay, that might be an explanation for it from a Christian perspective. Personally, I don't buy it. Karma in the New Age sense. So this is where we have a lot of fun. I don't go for it at all. And again, this is one of the things that we've looked at in depth. We've had many conversations about karma, and the conclusion that I can come to is it just doesn't work.
No.
Not like that. And unless there's some kind of afterlife karma, in which case, well, some people say that we go to hell to pay for that. But even hell seems unfair, a long-lasting eternity in hell and suffering just for a couple of mistakes that you weren't aware of, or that you didn't have the chance to learn from.
Well, some people will say that murderers and tyrants don't suffer in this life, but
Mm,
they pay for what they've done in what lies beyond. But what good is
mm,
that for the rest of us when we don't get to see it? So we don't get the proof that that's what you reap if you choose to behave in that way. If we could see them getting punished, might that serve as a deterrent to everyone else for them not to behave in the same way? But we
well,
don't
yeah,
get
I
that.
mean, morality and ethics seem to have gone out the window. So what we're talking about here is if we behave morally, then theoretically we should have a society that's blooming and blossoming and beautiful and gets on with each other. There's no wars or anything like that. But that's not what we see.
Right.
So, yeah, in answer to your question, I can only come to the conclusion that whatever is in charge of this realm, if there is anything at all, and I'm not, again, that's not an atheist mindset, but are we looking at God wrong? Does God even have a personality? Does God give a shit about good or bad or evil? I don't think so personally, looking at it from that perspective. But that's a bit cold. Um, I can't really answer that question cohesively because
Mm.
there's no sense to it.
Well, you got a great quote in your presentation from Thomas Swan, who
Hmm.
was, I think he was a political reformer that was an anti-slave
Right.
abolitionist guy, wasn't
So yeah, I think I know where that is. I'll pull that one
he?
up.
Yeah.
It's a bit further down.
Well, you can go back to where you were if you like. I've got
No,
the quote here.
that's fine. I can go backwards and
Yeah, I've got
forwards.
the quote here. So
There we
he
go.
said, perhaps the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he was God. Indeed, what better way to get revenge on a benevolent God than to found a religion that does great evil in his name.
Mm.
Great quote.
It's the old inversion thing again, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's if you're this evil entity and you just go out and create chaos, what better thing to do than to basically blame it on somebody else? I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, God is the king of gaslighters.
God the gaslighter. Yeah.
That's me getting strung up.
Well,
But
Eric
effectively, that's
Dubé
what.
put out a video titled "God the Gaslighter," which I
Ooh,
loved.
I think I've seen that one as well, actually.
It's really good.
But I mean, okay, so let's take an example of gaslighting, right? So we've got Moses with his 10 Commandments, and the first thing he does is go down Mount Sinai or Horeb or whatever mountain you want to choose that he came from, because there's different accounts. Goes to his people, and he's the first lawbreaker. You know, he sees his people transgressing against the law, smashes the tablets down on the floor. He's the first lawbreaker. So between him and Yahweh, they produce. They go down and sacrifice and kill indiscriminately anybody who's worshiping the golden calf. So then God and Moses have both gone against the commandment of thou shalt not kill.
Both need anger management classes.
A little, a little bit, yeah. It does, yeah. That sounds weird when you say anger management classes for God, but yeah, something like that. But you know, so he's basically commanding people to do all of these laws and covenants. You know, you mustn't covet thy neighbor's wife. You know, you don't kill, you don't steal, things like this. And yeah, that's exactly what we see repeated all the way through. So he's saying, well, you can't do that, but I'm gonna, but I'm benevolent. But you've got to take my word for it because I'm a benevolent God. And if you say otherwise, I'll strike you down.
That's gaslighting.
That's gaslighting, and yeah, I mean, he's you know, are we going for the world's first narcissist here? Interesting. Yeah, I've got to be careful what I say at this point.
I think we've gone way beyond that point, to be honest.
Yeah, whoops. Well, do you know what? Look, I'm open-minded, right? So if I'm wrong about this, if I'm wrong about anything, I'm quite happy to have a debate, a civil discussion, not arguing, not slanging match, not a you're on that side and I'm on that side. No, I'm coming at this from a neutral perspective. This is my findings, my observations based on my research, right? And I'm not the only person in history. In fact, at the minute, 2024, there's quite a lot of people delving into this stuff, and we're all coming to the same conclusion. And one of the things that I say is, in terms of Christianity and people having the wrong impression about this benevolent God, when actually he's not, why do you think the Bible was banned into, you know, so peasants were not allowed? It was an illegal act to own or read a Bible throughout certain periods of history. And the only way that they could access that information was to go to their, you know, their preachers' pulpits and their churches and cathedrals, and have cherry-picked examples of the best bits thrown at them and saying, well, God is benevolent, but he will have mercy on those that he likes, and you've got to be a good boy. That's social engineering, right? Get everyone afraid of this religion that they're not allowed to delve into for themselves, and then proceed to mold people's behaviors, impressions, ideologies based on that religion. In other words, the church's version of that religion, and then gaslight the hell out of them. It's
fear-based mind control
to the extreme. So,
and there was another religion which came along in 2020 called Convid, which actually was a religion. And if you look at the way it was carried out, and people were coerced into conformity and gaslit into conformity, it's exactly the same as what religious systems of mind control do. It was just the latest contemporary manifestation of these same ideas, same tactics.
Can't disagree with that. I mean, people's behaviors would. I'm actually shocked. I mean, I'm not a fan of humanity. I don't like humans. But even I was shocked at just how easily they would fall into this mindset of, you know, it was almost like a complete worldview alteration.
Yeah.
To the point where people were repeating, you know, I mean, we've got these narratives, you know, the rule of three, you know, stay at home, save lives, blah, 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 right? So these are mantras. These are your doctrines. These are your religious doctrines. And then, of course, people follow suit, and then they go out and preach. You shouldn't be doing zealots. That. Yeah, zealot. Yeah, but there's no. Where's the rationale behind it? Where's the thought? Where's the logic? You know, and then people who look into it and say, well, hang on a minute, this doesn't make any sense. What, you know, even if there was a virus, you know, maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. I don't know. I'm sick of hearing it, to be honest. But, you know, look at the evidence that was provided for that particular experience. And as much as we're demonized for it, we're not wrong, are we? But the
Got more
religious
holes than a
mindset that
piece of
comes
Swiss
with it.
cheese.
Yeah. But I mean, look, I would argue that all religions are forms of mind control, and all forms of mind control with religion is a psyop. It's a psychological operation to keep the population under control and divert the flow of consciousness and society. Christianity is just another example of that. I mean, even if you go for the Roman behavior, the Roman pantheon or the Egyptian pantheons, of which there were several, it's all about control and flow of uh, consciousness. It's kind of limiting us, as Mark Passio would say, it's to bind back. The very word religion is to bind back, or to thwart, as you've said many times, to thwart from forward progress, right? To
Yeah.
rebind. And that's exactly what it does. It holds us back from progressing and evolving. And I know that, again, that's another charged word, unfortunately, but everything does evolve. Maybe not in the Darwinian sense, but everything evolves. Religion, God, behaviors, all of that.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna,
So it's more inversion.
yeah,
Religion is supposed to advance consciousness and encourage higher
yeah,
minded behaviors, but it's actually doing the opposite. And it's just another expression of how everything in this world is back to front, upside down, and the opposite of what it should be and how it's presented to us. So
yeah.
we're back to the initial question: can this really be a realm created by a benevolent, loving God who wants the best for us? Or does all the evidence suggest
Hmm.
that this is actually the opposite of that, which is a realm specially designed to keep us enslaved and suffering and all the rest of it? Just asking the question.
No, I mean, I think everyone needs to be asking this question, because the only way to deal with the problem is to identify it, and then you kind of take it from there and say, well, where have we gone wrong? What needs to change? So again, it's a question of morality, isn't it? And we clearly don't have morality. Um, I'm trying to think of. Repeat the last question because it's gone. repeat the last question you had for me.
Just that all the evidence available to us
Hmm.
suggests that anyone applying common sense and
Yes.
reason would have to conclude that this is a realm that is constructed to cultivate pain, suffering, trauma, fear, all the rest of it.
Right. That,
It's
that right.
not a,
That's
it's,
yeah.
right. It's not a realm that has been constructed to cultivate fear, joy and love and happiness
Yeah.
and all those things.
Unless we're supposed to be happy with small amounts of joy and happiness, which
Well,
again,
yeah,
is happiness even a
this
thing?
is an interesting thing because creation or the universe or whatever it is
Hmm.
seems to throw us a bone every now and again. We get given just enough of a reason to keep hanging on in there and keep plodding on. It's not much, but
Hmm.
every now and again we might just get a few scraps from the table thrown to us.
Okay, so I'll give
That's
you an
quite interesting
example.
as well.
No, but so, and you've probably had this one thrown at you as well. Okay, so I used to have a friend, ex-friend, because falling out with him over Christianity and flat Earth. Imagine that. I went for a walk with this guy in a forest on the hills, and I said, "Look, he's a Christian," and I said, "This place is hell." And he takes me to this little clearing, and he shows me all of this landscape in front of him. He says, "Look at that." I said, "Yeah, it's beautiful." He said, "Well, how can that be hell?" I said, "Well, it's simple, mate." I said, "They're destroying it." I said, "It's there. It's almost to taunt us. It's like, they put beautiful things there, and just as you start to appreciate them, or you know, have a connection with it, here comes the bulldozer. Here comes the fire. Here comes the new housing settlement. Here comes the new whatever you want to put there." And so, yeah, it is a beautiful place, but hell wouldn't really keep people entranced if it was just suffering and misery constantly, would it? I mean, what
Right.
what better way to confuse the life out of people than to make it appear the opposite of what it is, and then take it from them? That's hell. That's punishment.
Yeah.
I can't, I mean, I sound a bit irate there, but effectively, what we're looking at here is exactly that. These religion originators, or what, these social engineers. I've got a name for them, actually. I call them PSEs, which is psychopathic social engineers, and they've been here since the dawn of time. Since the dawn of humanity, anyway. And everything they do is inversion. but yet they convince us that it's good. I mean, again, 2024. I mean, my God, anyone who thinks this is a normal, moral, ethical way to live, we're twisted. Our very outlook on everything is twisted. That's pure inversion. So yeah, going back to is Yahweh the devil, the Demiurge? I think the evidence is pretty consistent, isn't it? It's kind of, by their fruits you shall know them, or in this case, by his fruits you shall certainly know him.
Yeah.
Actually, can I also make a point here as well, as to say that, how exactly do we perceive God? Because we've got God walking in the Garden of Eden with Adam several times, incapable of finding out where he's gone. In the case of
Well, he was hiding behind a bush,
well, Cain and Abel, he seems to be, what have you done? What have you done? Where's Abel? What have you done, Cain? Is that gaslighting? Is that a genuine, or is that a genuine question? I can't. What have you done with your brother? Yeah, God, there's so many examples.
Needs to go to Specsavers as well, then.
Ouch. Well, maybe a hearing aid would help. But then, suddenly he's a burning bush on the top of a mountain. Well, that reminds me of something else. So in the Islamic or the Semitic accounts, so a burning bush or a smokeless fire reminds us of another entity called a jinn or a jinni, which we obviously comes down to us in the West as a genie. And it does make you wonder, is this entity some kind of demon that was, did somebody come across it at some point? And, this entity saying, well, I will promise you all of this if you just do this for me. And of course, if somebody's profiting from that, it doesn't matter, you've got to be a psychopath to basically profit at the expense of other people anyway, as far as I'm concerned. But this is the display that we're seeing. And then we're told in almost a complete mood change that God is Jesus, and he gave birth to himself effectively, and he came here to also be tortured and live through extremes to pay for other people's sins. Doesn't make sense. But so then we've got different forms of God coming to us in the form of human flesh, but then we're told that no, actually God's not the flesh. Well, what is he then? Is he the cloud? Is he a voice in your head? Is it some kind of schizophrenia? Is it a demonic entity? These are just questions that you got to ask. I'm not stating these as fact. This is just my questions. Another example. Sorry, again, just cut me off if you've got any questions, or if the other example I would give here is the Ark. So the Ark of the Covenant that was carried around into battle many times, and everywhere this thing went. It sounds like a fairy tale here. It's not. But they take this Ark with them, and there's just death and destruction. There's on one account, I think it's in Chronicles, and I could be wrong on that one, where the enemy happens to come across the Ark. It's been left. The Israelites have been destroyed. The armies retreated, and the Ark has been left behind. So the victors of the battle basically say, right, okay, this Ark is it's a treasured icon, a treasured possession of the enemy. We'll return it to them. We'll give them back. So they take it back to the Israelites. They put it down in a tent or the tabernacle, and Yahweh or whatever's in the Ark then thanks them by slaughtering them. Thanks for returning me to my people. Bye bye. This more inversion, more gaslighting. I think I've offended a few with that one. A couple more examples. Yeah,
sorry, just as an aside there, what you were saying about the jinn within Islamic traditions from which we get genie. It's interesting that jinn is very close to the word jinn for the drink, the alcoholic drink, which is a spirit. And of course, Muslims frown on the drinking of alcohol because they believe that it can be a portal for spirits to come through. And we have alcoholic drinks openly called spirits, including gin. Find that interesting.
Plus, it alters people's behaviors. It makes them do things they wouldn't ordinarily do.
Changes their personalities.
Yeah, lose their inhibitions. They get rather passionate over certain things. Their controls are released, relaxed. Again, it's a moral thing, isn't it? I mean, personally, I'm not a big fan of alcohol. I could live without it. If somebody said that there's going to be no more alcohol, I'd just say, yeah, fine, okay. Give me coffee instead. But yeah, the whole idea of spirits being entrapped in sort of substances. So another example is, when you've got problematic children, sort of like,
Yeah.
I'll try and choose my words carefully here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take the 2024 version of a problematic child, right? So you've got a child with ADHD who's got anger issues. He's spent too often on it, too many years playing on his iPad. Doesn't quite get it. He's been, his parents have not taught him morality or ethics or right from wrong. None of that. His school, pretty much same thing. And you've got this unhinged, evil psychopath in the making, or certainly a narcissist. And the reason I bring this up is it's said, and I think especially in the Islamic tradition, that children like that are literally possessed of a demon through conception. So anybody who was conceived under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or some kind of, it was an angry confrontation. I'll try and not mention that word on YouTube, but anything that causes an impurity or a disturbance in the natural frequency, these entities are said to come into that person and take them over. It's like they're cohabiting with a child. And so all these problem children are said to be possessed through, as you say, spirits, drinks, alcohol, things like that. The same can be said in some cases for meat, because the whole idea of you are what you eat. You're consuming this energetic frequency. And I'm not a vegetarian, by the way. I know obviously you're a vegan. I'm not an advocate either way. I don't agree with the cruelty of animals, but at the same time I do enjoy meat. But it's a bit ironic.
Well, I like a drink, so we all have our vices.
Exactly. But again, it's one of those things that, could we live without it? Yeah, potentially. But I'm not eating insects. But even then, so I'll give you another example, right? So I spent many years with the Jehovah's Witnesses. I was never a Jehovah's Witness, but I spent many years with them. I've still got many friends in there. I've got a lot of respect for them, actually. The lovely people. However, their idea that you shouldn't have the blood of somebody else, right? So this whole blood transfusion thing, you're not supposed to transfer blood between one person and another. They would say that God, as in Yahweh, says that you mustn't do that because the blood is for God specifically. You mustn't touch the blood. However, if you consider it from an objective standpoint, you are consuming the life force or the death force of that particular animal that you're consuming. You are consuming that vibration, that frequency into your body. And so that's another way of maybe possession. Are we opening ourselves up to this immoral way of living, because it's almost like we're consuming it without realizing it? That's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't know if that answers the question, but
sure. Well, that was a side step anyway. So
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
do you want to press on with the presentation there? What's the next
I can
slide?
do. Yeah. So I'm gonna skip through a couple of things here. Right. So in terms of God, Yahweh, the benevolent God. Okay. Genesis 19:8. Lot offers his daughters to be pleasured by without consent. Okay. Genesis 22. Abraham is told to burn his son as a sacrifice on the altar to Yahweh. We pretty much know how the story ends, that he was told to, right at the last minute, an angel pops in and says, no, it's all right. We just sacrifice that lamb or that goat over there. That'll do instead. Numbers, actually I've missed one. Leviticus 26:29. Yahweh threatens child cannibalism as punishment. Clearly an advocate for child safety. Numbers 15:32. Yahweh condemns men to die for gathering wood on the Sabbath. Mustn't do that. Deuteronomy 21:18. Disobedient sons must be stoned to death. Oh dear. Joshua 7. Achan, I think I'm saying that right. Achan's children were stoned and burned for Yahweh. Judges 11:30. Jephthah sacrifices his daughter's virginity in thanks to Yahweh. In fact, I think that's the guy that he went to war and made a prayer to Yahweh and says, look, give us victory, and when I return home from the war, whoever comes to greet me first, I shall make as a sacrifice to you. I mean, who the hell does that? I mean, it's a stupid thing to do anyway. So anyway, they get the victory. Guy returns home and his daughter comes to meet him. Virgin, young girl. Daddy, glad to see you. It's lovely to see you back from the war. And the response is, oh God, why you? Why have you come? He explains that I've offered the sacrifice. She accepts it, dies a virgin, and God accepts the sacrifice. There is a bit of a theme going on here. 1 Samuel David slays. This one's going to make a few people laugh, I think. Right. So David slays 200 Philistines to use their foreskins as a wedding dowry. A strange wedding gift. 2 Kings, or 2 Kings, Yahweh burns 102 men to prove that Elijah is a man of God. Good example. Book of Job, as we've already covered a little bit, Yahweh and Satan torture Job mentally, physically, and spiritually to the absolute extreme as a bet to test Job's dedication and faith to Yahweh. If we continue, we've got the 10 plagues of Egypt, which is another example of absolute butchery.
Psychopathy.
Psychopathy, yeah. I mean, this is malevolence to the extreme. Incidentally, so I've looked into the historical period of when the Exodus was supposed to have taken place, and this occurs during what's known as the collapse of the Bronze Age, right? So this is where we get some kind of geological disturbances is happening all over the I can't say the planet because I don't know, I can't speak for anywhere other than Europe and the Middle East, but there was a mass migration of peoples from the west to the east. So that came in a form of invasions. There was a lot of disease, disruptions, weather changes, climate changes. Yep, there's another point. Well, let's not go into that one.
Sounds familiar.
It does sound a bit familiar. I mean, are we going through another collapse? I would argue yes. But at the time that all this was happening, the rulers in the northern kingdom of Egypt. So Egypt was split into 2 kingdoms, the north and the south. It was symbiotic. They worked together. But the northern kingdom was under the control of a people or a culture known as the Hyksos. And the Hyksos come from the region of Canaan and from people who were referred to as the Habiru. And Habiru was another word for wanderer or kind of like a nomad, somebody who wandered the land and took what they wanted from the land and then moved on. So nomads. So these Habiru from Canaan are the people that can be identified as the Hyksos, rulers of Egypt. And eventually, after all of these events with the Bronze Age collapse, basically the pharaoh in the south, after the murder of his father or his grandfather, I think in this instance, decided, right, the old ways are coming back. We're going to kick these people out of Egypt. They've been here long enough. Get out of the country. We don't want you here anymore. So they kicked out the Hyksos. And the Hyksos, of course, then migrated east through Sinai and then back into Canaan. Well, this correlates exactly with the story of Moses and the Exodus. I mean, the numbers of the population are a bit exaggerated, but either way, we have this mass migration of people. So all of these 10 plagues of Egypt, for all intents and purposes, could well have occurred naturally. But the one that I think offends most atheists in particular, and rightfully so, is the idea that the firstborn, the firstborn sons of the people of Egypt would be slaughtered if they didn't release, the Israelites from captivity. Well, according to history, there was never an Israelite captivity. There was an Israelite, not even Israelite. There's a Hebrew presence in Egypt that had a royal lineage that were kicked out. But the idea that innocent children are going to be slaughtered as a punishment. Again, what did the innocents do? What the hell? Why that? I mean, you could okay, frogs falling from the sky. We do have incidences of this in history, actually. Blood rivers, yeah, there could be a number of reasons for that. Boils, livestock, change. Again, changes in climate and environment. Yeah, we can explain that to an extent, but the last one on the list, that's a bit mad. It's a bit psychopathic. Then we've got the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, apparently because of immoral behavior. So again, we've got a bit of gaslighting going on. God comes down. I think it's Lot at the top of the hill. I could be wrong on that one. Jordan Maxwell would slap me for that. And this guy, he says, "Oh, come on in." These 3 strangers coming into the city. He says, "Come on in. I'll give you some food and drink." And of course, one of them was God in human form with 2 angels. And so he proceeded to ask, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, we're going to go down into that city and destroy it because of the immoral behavior and the sexual misconduct." So there's, I think it's Lot, and I might be mistaken on that. He starts to bargain with God and the angels. Well, what if there's 100 people in there that are not immoral? And the answer is, well, we won't slaughter them then. If there's 100 people, we won't do it. And he said, what if you only find 10? He says, if there's 10 people in there that are not immoral, we won't slaughter it. We won't destroy the city. But anyway, story goes, city was destroyed, both cities. because of immoral behavior, massive gaslighting. This is stuff that God himself is often accused of doing.
Would have made a good politician.
I would argue that politicians are modelled on this. It's kind of like the idea. It's politician school, isn't it?
Exactly.
In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've already. Sorry, I'll come to it. I'll end this section in a bit, and we'll have a question if you like. We mustn't forget also that God condoned. In fact, if God, let's face it, if God is all knowing, then he knew what was going to happen at all times. So the murder of his only son was a planned, fateful act. If we believe the New Testament,
Right.
not really.
Or he's a sadomasochist.
That's the one. That's the one. I couldn't remember the word. I was struggling. So, but yeah. And then, just as a final example of this, what better way to show your love and compassion than to flood the entire world and rid it of its population of both animals, plants, wildlife, and humanity, with the exception of one single family? Again, this comes back from a Mesopotamian epic. The flood is not even a Christian epic. It was taken from much, much older traditions, from clay tablets and stone reliefs. Take your pick. So there we go.
But he loves you.
Oh, he does. Yeah. That you embodied George Carlin there.
Exactly.
He loves you, but he needs your money.
Just no good with money. Can't handle money.
Just doesn't get it. I can do a fantastic George Carlin impression, but I can't remember what it was. Come back to that. Come back. I'll see if I can channel a bit of George Carlin.
I sent you a Bill Hicks video earlier as well.
That was, you know what? That was absolutely brilliant. Because you've mentioned this before, haven't you? With the
couple of redneck Hicks after a gig, they're like, "Hey, buddy, we don't like what you said about Jesus in there," and he goes, "So forgive me."
Exactly. Isn't that what Christians are told to do?
Well, he's just gaslighting in the same way that Yahweh does, isn't he?
I think it's a fantastic response, actually.
Probably explains why he's no longer in this realm.
Yeah. Well,
that's George Carlin, for that matter.
A lot of people say that Bill Hicks is basically he didn't actually die of cancer.
Became Alex Jones,
remedied, and he's come back as Alex Jones. But I've seen some interesting examples of that. But I remain on the fence regardless. So
I'm not having that one.
You're not?
No, I don't accept that one.
Interesting. I think John Hamer would actually disapprove of that one. Not disapprove, disagree. Because
people take these things too far. According to many, any famous person that is said to have died comes back as somebody else. Have you heard about Jimi Hendrix is supposed to be Morgan Freeman?
Really? Morgan
According
Freeman?
to some. Jim Morrison became Rush Limbaugh, whatever his name is. There's many,
Well, there is. I mean, give a few
but
more.
Then there's
examples.
Elvis Presley and Pastor Bob Joyce, which for me is potentially plausible. So you have to look at each one in isolation. I don't accept the Bill Hicks, Alex Jones, but Elvis Presley, Pastor Bob Joyce.
Well, no, but the idea that it happens, yes, it's plausible, and yes, it probably has happened in some circumstances. But we shouldn't really fall into the binary thinking of it's all black and white. So it's either all that or all the other.
Exactly.
So it's exactly right. And this is a problem with the truth movement at large, I would argue. And I'm gonna have a stab at the truth movement. You often fall into.
We'll do another show on that.
Well, actually, I've got an entire presentation for that one if you're interested.
No, we should. We're doing a whole show on that.
Oh, done. Agreed. Yeah, we'll come back to that another time then. So yeah, just I'm going to close this little section here. Again, going back to God's kill count of 24 million, and we asked the question earlier: is Yahweh the God of all creation? Is he evil? Is he incompetent, stupid, or inept? Okay, so Epicurus, a Greek, this is ancient, this is before Christianity, it's before Judaism, or well, it might have been at the same time with Judaism in its early stages, is quoted as saying, is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. If he is able but not willing, then he is malevolent. If he is both able and willing, then whence cometh evil? If he is neither able nor willing, then why call him God? And I think that sums up what we were trying to get across in the Old Testament there. I think that's a perfect summing up of that.
It really is. And it's a great cue for my next question, which is, it's a question I'm going to ask of every guest I have on these subjects until I get a satisfactory answer. So I'm not holding my breath. But yeah, I'm going to put this to everyone. So if original creation was somehow hijacked or infiltrated or usurped by some demonic entity,
Hmm.
whether we call it Yahweh or the Demiurge or
Yeah.
Yaldabaoth or whatever, with really bad plans for us. Where was the original God of creation, the supreme creator, when this
Mm.
happened? And how and why did he or it allow this outrageous usurping to take place? Again, going back to that Epicurus quote,
Yes.
if
Yeah.
God is omnipotent, if he is, he would have known that this was going to happen and
Hmm.
he would have been in a position to prevent it. And yet he or it didn't. So, what does that tell us about the original God? If we do accept that we're somehow living in some sort of simulation and it was hijacked by a demiurge or whatever,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I've
I
got
do.
this absurd vision of the original God reclining on a hammock uh, with a cocktail sipping on a straw, just going, can't be bothered.
So, I mean, I would say that that was a question of the century. That one. I mean, that's
I
probably,
don't know if you can have a bigger question than that, to be honest.
well, not if you're looking at the overall picture. I mean, when you're trying to piece everything together from an outside perspective and just say, well, what the hell is this? What is it all about? That's the obvious question, isn't it? So either evil is actually a good thing, and suffering is the natural way of things, which sounds horrendous, or something's gone wrong. But then you've still got to ask that if we do have this all powerful force, this all powerful, all knowing creative force in the universe, and it allows this to happen, it allows itself to be intercepted and sabotaged by another entity that thinks it's God or that presumes itself to be all powerful, and it just allows it to happen. I can't look at that and provide any kind of, yeah, that's acceptable, or it's got this reason, or it's a school, or it's to give us
Mm.
experience, or it's a moral lesson so that we come from this reality and
Well,
say,
you'll get these answers
yeah,
from new age inclined people. They'll say, "Oh,
yeah,
it's free will. Humanity has chosen this way. It's because of our bad actions and our poor choices and stuff."
yeah,
But do you and I individually and so many others deserve this? Did we
no,
choose this, or are we being held in collective punishment? That just doesn't hold any water for me when people say it's humanity's choice that's led to
no.
this. When were we ever given a chance?
Well, this is the thing, right? Okay, so let's two things, right? Number one, I think we need to look at God differently, right? So I think we need to put it in a different light. I think we need to look at it objectively as a creative force, but not necessarily one that has any preference or benevolence or evil or anything like that. It just is. It's a creative force. If we look at it like that, it's almost an atheistic viewpoint, almost. But I'm saying that there is a creative force there. But it's kind of like it puts it together and just presses the play button and says, right, go, right, and just sees what happens, right? So we could look at it like that. And in which case, anything that presumes itself to be God, it's just going to say, "Yeah, carry on. Let's see where it goes." So it's not benevolent, clearly, if it allows it to happen.
It's neutral at best.
Yeah, neutral, absolutely. I think would cover it. Um, and yeah, I mean, again, it's a cold, hard way of looking at the creative force of all things.
It's a cold, hard world, mate.
It is.
It
And
turns
I,
out.
I, I cannot see any justification for why this. I mean, you were asked the question. I think it was Dave Murphy. I like the lad; he's a nice lad. Um, but some of the justifications he used, it just doesn't gel.
I was just making the point in that conversation with him that if I were the supreme creator, not
Mm,
making any claim to be anything close to that, but if I were capable of anything and I could have any kind of reality that I wanted, I would not choose one where suffering, pain, fear, and death was necessary,
yeah,
and where living sentient creatures had to murder each other every day and rip each other apart. I can
yeah.
think of so many better ways of constructing a realm than all that stuff being necessary. And Dave just wasn't having it. And he was
Well,
saying,
how
"Well,
dare you presume that you know better than
he
God,
was
lad?
like, you're not God. I'm not making any claim to be God. I'm just saying that clearly there are so many better ways that this realm could be constructed. So why was it
Yeah,
done that way?" And Dave was more or less like, "Oh, you can't challenge God. You can't question why he
yeah.
did these things, but why not?"
Well, well, there's okay. So let's look into that. Why not? Why can't we question this? Right. So we're told that we're given free will, but then we're not allowed to use it. you know, if we enact our free will and ask questions or deviate from the course of fatalism and the plan or whatever else you want to look at it as from this divine aspect, then why give us free will in the first place? So
Or
you
the
can do whatever you
capacity for
like, but if you do,
critical
I'll punish you.
thought.
Yeah,
Why allow us to exercise critical thought if when it veers off in certain undesirable directions,
mhm,
we're told that's not fair game and we get firewalled off.
exactly. That to me doesn't just seem malevolent. That seems irrational. That's almost like a I'm really going to trigger people here. It's almost like a mental illness. I mean, it's
Right.
delusional.
Yeah.
It's not clear thinking. If it's not a case of 2 add 2 equals 4. It's a case of 2 add 2 equals 26 and a half.
Yeah.
Uh,
Petunias.
yeah, but I the best way that I would look at that question is why is this allowed to happen? Why are we in this position? The only explanation, logically, rationally, is that whatever that creative force is, it is just beyond our comprehension in terms of why can we understand it? Why does it do that? It's beyond that, but it certainly doesn't have a preference for good or evil. It just is. It just is. It just lets things go. It's like a simulation. I think it is a simulation, actually, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
Um, People call it matrix theory or whatever. I don't care what you call it. I do think this is a simulation, but again, you've got to look at whatever the hell put the simulation in place in the first place.
That's
That, for
right.
all intents and purposes, is the creator of this universe, this world, this realm, and so there's God. And so we still come back to the question: why? Why does all this stuff happen? The other way of looking at it is, and this is slightly new agey, and again, I'm not saying I go for this. I'm saying that this is another way of looking at it: is that we are God collectively, and that for some reason we've decided to wipe our memories clean, come into our own creation, and experience it almost from a chaotic standpoint of, well, you're going in there and you get what you're given. Right, so that's situation and circumstance. We've put ourselves in a simulation, wiped our memory of the fact that we are actually the simulated creation, the creator, and we're just playing around. It's a computer game, but it's a very painful computer game. And again, you've got to ask the question: why the hell would such suffering be allowed in the first place? So
Mm.
there's no way of getting out of it, whether you look at it from a biblical perspective, a spiritual perspective, a New Age perspective, and even an atheist perspective. I mean, where
Well,
does
there's
all this come
there's
from?
degrees to that because you might be able to make the argument for lessons being learned through hardships that you experience.
Hmm.
So if you're selfish, if you're greedy, if you don't consider others enough, then certain things might come your way to teach you a little lesson or two. But then when you
Yeah.
get into horrific areas like satanic ritual abuse and some of the medieval torture methods that were meted out to people, you think, what level of consciousness is capable of even thinking up these
Yeah.
things? That's not learning lessons. That's pure sadism.
It's punishment.
Yeah, it's just horror, and for horror's sake.
I mean, let's take so if you were a child of, say, 5-year-old, and it's your first day at nursery, and you're just playing, you don't know the rules, you're just in there to have a bit of fun, and you're learning a bit as you go along, and you're playing with your friends, and suddenly the teacher pulls you to one side and tells you, right, you look at that wall and you don't speak. And the kids, obviously the kid's going to cry and he's going to think, well, what have I done? What have I done? And the teacher says, no, you don't talk, you don't question, you don't, stand there and do as you're told. That's it, right? And so the kids then left with the question, well, what the hell's just happened? I don't know what I've done wrong. Nobody's explaining it to me. How can I put right my behavior if I don't know that I've committed a wrong in the first place?
Right.
Well, it's a bit of an odd anecdote, but
Well, we would call that child abuse, wouldn't we?
it's an interesting one, because are we not children of God? And are we not being abused? In the Christian sense of what, I mean, I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm saying that, yeah, it is kind of child abuse, isn't it?
I would
Which
say so,
which
yeah.
would explain why so many alterations to the education system have been brought in as well, without so much of a blink from most parents. I mean, we knew, Mark. I think we knew this was coming at least 10 years ago. I told people, keep them out of school because they're going to do things that you would never dream of. Anyway, that again, that's a side note. But yeah, the whole idea of God the Father and we being the children that are punished eternally for our small transgressions, that's child abuse. Yeah,
Yeah.
without the chance for redemption. Oh wait, speaking of redemption, so yeah, we do have a redeemer, don't we? Or do we?
Yeah. It's
So
like punishment for the crime of being born.
yeah,
So yeah, it's a good point to move on to part 5 of your presentation here, the final part, syncretism.
yeah,
So we're getting into the New Testament and the bringing together of different faiths and belief systems
yeah.
for the purpose of mass mind control, really, which I think is why syncretism gets done. But anyway, I'll give you the floor for this.
Well, no, I mean you're right. Again, I look at all of history and I say it's one massive mind control operation. It's one massive sale from start to finish. Religion being the biggest of them. I mean, Mark Passio would say that money is, and I'm not saying that he's wrong. Sorry, Passio, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying from my perspective, I think religion takes the crown for
Don't
that.
make him angry.
Oh, I wouldn't make him angry. I've got actually speaking of Passio, I've got the absolute highest level of respect for the guy, and consider him probably the top of the pyramid in terms of teaching stuff like this. But we can,
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
Passio's right. I understand his anger. It's righteous. My God, I feel that. And I know you get to the point sometimes where you just think, what the fuck is wrong with people?
Yep.
So it's righteous anger. And I've got the absolute utmost respect for the guy. Anyway, that aside, no more virtue signaling. So, yes, syncretism. So the first time I came across the word syncretism was with Santos Bonacci. Again, another guy, I absolute respect for him. I love his teachings. I think he does it very well, or more so in the past. And what this is, it's a merging of two or more religious traditions or even ideologies when societies combine. So if you've got, a merger of empires or, they will take elements of that society's religion, elements of that society's religion, find out what the common denominators are or, the commonalities and then merge them together. So for example, Jupiter in the Roman world would be Zeus, in the Greek world would be Jove or Yahweh in the Jewish or Canaanite area, which we'll come to in a little bit. So that's basically that's syncretism, the short version. The old again, we'll come to the New Testament shortly, actually, but the idea that the Bible is a syncretized library is probably one of the better ways of looking at it. So we've got Sumerian, Canaanite, Phoenician, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Hatti. Well, all of these different traditions have all been combined and merged, reformulated, rewritten, I was going to say re-educated there, edited, redacted, etc., etc. So this is where we get syncretism, and every single religion in the world has been syncretized, and Christianity is no exception to that whatsoever.
Right.
Yes. So on this slide, there's a couple of examples. Okay. So Baal, Bel, El, or Yahweh. So we've got a couple of pictures there. I hope this is coming across on the screen all right for you.
It is, yep.
So then we have the father of the gods, who we'll come to a little bit. I think it's the next slide, in fact. So we've got Anu, the Sumerian Anu, the sky god, the god, the father of the gods. But even he's not the original creator god, incidentally. But he's the god, or rather the father of Enlil and Enki. Again, we merged Enlil and Enki as Ea and El and merge them together for the biblical El. We have another example of the Canaanite god El, meaning Lord. Apparently, another translation of El is judge. So hence the book of Judges. It's almost like a member of a council, if you like, right? So the El means like the presiding or president of a council. There you go. That's an
An
interesting one.
elder.
Elder. Yeah, I like
There's
that.
another one.
I missed that. That's going in my book. Thank you. Enki, who was later changed in Babylonian to Ea, which was later merged into Yahweh, Jehovah. Incidentally, if anyone's heard of an author called David Roll, he comes out with an interesting hypothesis in terms of the whole when Moses is on Mount Sinai and he says to God, "What shall we call you?" and God replies, "I am that I am." The original translation of that apparently is Ea Asher Ea, or Ea, my name is Ea, as in Yah, Ea. So there's a lot of different ways you could look at that. So the name of God, Yahweh, is Ea from Enki. It's, so what are we being told there? Anyway, back on track. So
It's all
On
there in the
the
language, isn't it? So many different entities have similar names, similar
yeah,
etymology. Just thinking of the Rastafarian religion, which is based on Judaism and Christianity.
yeah,
Their most high is Jah, which is similar to Yah, as in Yahweh.
yeah.
So they're all coming from the same root source.
Again, but is so okay? Is Rastafarianism then just another example of a syncretized religion? Because if we've got
Well, it is,
elements
yeah.
of many, it's a perfect example.
That's
Um,
right. It
again,
draws on elements of many different,
hmm.
inspirations.
It does. I mean, I don't. To be fair, I don't like commenting on things I don't know much about in Rastafarianism. I don't. I haven't got a clue. But it's interesting that you mentioned it's based on Judaism.
Well, they speak
Um,
about Babylon. Babylon
hmm,
is like the wicked control system, New
yeah.
World Order, you might call it today. And they talk about Zion and Judah.
Hmm.
So they're just drawing on these sort of Hebrew traditions.
That's curious. I think. Do you know what? I think it's time I looked into that one as well then, because that sounds very interesting.
There's another chapter for you.
Mate, it's already massive as it is. I mean, I hope you're ready for a good proofread because it's huge. Anyway, so
Make John Hamer's books look like pamphlets.
oh, not quite, not quite. Don't say that to John. I'll get a slap and then I'll pass it to you. So, no, not quite. I mean, to be fair to John, he's got quite the body of work there. I'm not even going to attempt to compete with that. That's not happening. I mean, he's.
Well, if you ever need a doorstop, his books are for you.
Oh, tell him you said that.
No, don't.
Oh, is that what he said? Oh, anyway.
Hello,
Right.
John. We love
Sorry,
you,
John.
really.
Sorry, my mistake. Right. So then we've got the idea that God's got a wife. So as in Yahweh has a wife, and so the biblical God has a consort, if you like, called Asherah, which is the same entity as Astarte or Ishtar. Again, talking about Babylon, Ishtar was the Babylonian goddess. I think it was a moon goddess primarily, but also the consort of the god Enki. So, I mean, take of that what you like. I mean, she's got a nice set up there. It's not bad, not bad.
Well, these days they'd be transgendered, of course.
Well, the universal androgyny. Yeah, we shouldn't really go there at the minute because I think
Well, we could, but it'd be another 2-hour show, wouldn't it?
it would. But I mean, that's an esoteric tradition, isn't it? That we all come from the universal androgyny that was then split and divided into two, which is where we get duality from, which is where we get the hermetic principles of gender. You've got your positive, your negative, your male, your female, your masculine, your feminine, your red, your blue, all of that. So
What
that's
Baphomet
all.
is all about.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah. I mean, again, I've got another presentation on that went down very well. If you look at the Baphomet, and again, this is going to trigger the shite out of people. And I'm not apologizing for this actually, because if you look at Baphomet, it's a hermetic, allegorical or symbolical body. It's not necessarily satanic. I'm not saying that Satanists haven't used it. Of course they have. But then again, Satanists, as in the Church of Satan, they do tend to have a good understanding of the hermetic principles, the esoteric traditions. It's all there. So they know
It's
what
the
they're
same as
doing.
the seal of Solomon, so called, the
Yeah.
Star of David. There's male and female principles embodied in that.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Oh,
it's
it's
not
the chalice and
necessarily
blade.
satanic, although it's been used by satanic groups.
Yeah. I mean, what is if you look at the Star of David, if you want to call it that, it is the merger of the male and the female, which then goes forth to create. It's the element of creation, right? You merge the two, and Genesis occurs.
Right.
It's if you look at the Freemasonic square and compass, and you overlay them, put a line across them, you've got there it is again. You've got the Star of David with a G in the middle, generative principle, as in the act of creation is the combination, the unification of the male and female. It's the coming together, the cohesion. I'm going to get a few raised eyebrows for saying that. Of the male and female, the masculine and feminine. Where is the evil in that? All this esoteric occult symbolism. It's not evil. It doesn't belong to the Satanists. It doesn't belong to the elite. They just understand it more than we do, right? They've got what we don't, which is a decent, proper education. They know how it works. And for the majority of cases, humanity doesn't get it. And of course, the idea that the occult and esoteric and hermeticism, the idea that it's all evil, well, what a fantastic way to stop people from looking into it.
That's right.
But either way, people make their own minds up either way. You've been accused of it. I mean, apparently you've got the devil in you because you're mark of the devil. in you. I mean,
Yeah, I'm telling you, in my name,
absolutely. Oh, I
I'm
mean,
rumbled
you're
down.
totally a shell, mate. But then,
Yeah, oh, I'm finished now.
yeah, exactly, right? So then I've got the name Nathan Lucius, which means light bearer or light bringer or gift of light.
Oh shit,
So
you're Lucifer.
I'm a Lucifer. There you go. I'm Luciferian. But then technically, how well do we understand the concept of Lucifer? Christians really, really need to consider the symbolism behind Jesus the Son, because the references to Lucifer in the Bible are the same as the references to Jesus. The guy is the same thing. Again, that's going to offend. I'm only speaking what I see. So this my research has shown me very, very clearly, very evidently, that that's the case. Lucifer, the light bearer, the light of the world, the bringer of life. Nothing malevolent about it. In
The
fact,
ultimate light bringer has to be the sun.
it has to be. It brings warmth, brings light, good vibrations. People feel happy. Not that we see it much these days, courtesy the stratospheric aerosol injections, as they like to call them. But it'd be nice when we do get a bit of sunshine. And
Even though it's white.
even though it's no, that's a curiosity, isn't it? Somebody gave me an explanation for that the other day, actually. That something to do with solar flares, and it's going through a new period, like a new site. It's coming towards the end of its cycle or something like that. Not the end of the sun, but the end of its particular cycle, and it's going to regenerate. And so we've got it white at the minute when we've got usually the yellow sun at other times. So
Or it could be it's just a load of shite in the sky. That could be it.
it could be. I mean, why on earth would you draw that conclusion, Mark? It's not like you can see anything covering the sun up.
No,
Well,
sorry.
I mean, you're just a crazy conspiracy
I
theorist, man.
stand corrected.
Like you should. I mean, clearly there's nothing up there. I mean, I can't see any blue at the minute. Just coincidence.
Just nice
Anyway,
fluffy
sarcasm
clouds.
aside. See, I'm gaslighting. I'm now doing as God commands. I'm gaslighting. Christ. Okay, right.
All right,
Sorry,
back
mate.
to the presentation.
Yeah, I know. I do tend to waffle a bit. Okay, right. So let's look at syncretism in terms of astro-theology. Right. So we have the planet Uranus, which there's an old god called Uranus, which just so happens to fit exactly the description given for the god Uranus, who was the father of Saturn. And if we go down that particular line of mythology or solar astrotheology, Saturn was the father of Jupiter. Okay, so that can be cross-referenced by everybody. And the stars that we've seen, the planets, the wandering bodies, the luminaries, whatever you want to call them, or however you want to perceive that, they're up there. And if you're in an ancient civilization trying to figure things out and you're looking at these things in the sky, it's kind of natural that you're going to give them human traits to try and explain.
Them.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain things that happen when Mercury comes into the sky and then it leaves. It affects human behavior. It affects things. The sun, the planets, the moon, all of these things have an effect on society, on the planet, or however, again, however you choose to say that. That's not the
Well,
argument.
your technology fucks up.
Especially with solar flares, right? Electromagnetic interference. Right. So is that where you're going with that? Is that?
No, just when Mercury is in retrograde, it seems your computer and printer always pack up.
Interesting. So I've not noticed that specifically, but it might explain a few things, because last year I went through two of the buggers. I had a laptop that died on me, and then a computer that when I plugged it in as a spare, it just went pop. So yeah.
Or it could just be your bad luck.
Well, you know me, Mark. I like to test the universe a bit. Probably is that.
Lucky Lucius.
Thanks for that. Yeah, lucky. Oh no, lucky Lucy. Well, Lucy, here we go. So you like this one, obviously, from your work, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Well, right. Is Lucy, Lucifer, the sun in the sky with diamonds, the stars? Right. Is that just another astro-theological reference? Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, or were the Beatles just high on drugs?
Bit of both, probably.
It was the Beatles, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
I thought, right, I'm triggered. Right, good. Okay. Shall we skip on from there? Because I think the example there is pretty obvious.
Well, yeah, go ahead. I mean, what's so fascinating to me is how all these different names just converge. So from Zeus, you've got G-Zeus or J-Zeus. Yep. And it's the same entity as Jupiter, Jove. You've got there. It's basically Jupiter, from which you've drawn Jehovah, Yahweh, all these different names.
So can I explain that one a little bit more in depth? Because this one, this is something that I've never heard anybody else point out ever. And I looked at the etymology of the Latin and the way that the words are composed, right? So in the Latin, if you go to YouTube or the internet and find some Latin classes, it'll teach you how to speak, and what words sounded like, and how letters were replaced, or what we have with Jupiter. So the Roman god Jupiter, the father of the gods. Okay, the Romans were referred to him as Jove. It was kind of like an affectionate nickname. Jove, jovial. We have life and joy, isn't it? It's jovial. But they would have pronounced that in the Latin. So the J would have been a Y, O would have still been the O, the V would have been a W, and the E at the end of the word would have been pronounced A, right? So if you say Jove in the Latin, you get Yahweh, which I found, very, very similar to Yahweh.
Right.
And if we cross-reference the syncretism, it does appear that Yahweh, Jupiter, is the son of El. So again, there's more syncretized, twisted, almost manipulated, different versions of this, but we do have a lineage. It's kind of like somebody just went, right, how can we push all this together and claim it to be the one true religion? I know. He can now be the son of that, and that can be the son of that, and that can be the overall God, and then but we'll just say it's all really God, and that'll make it simple for the simple folk, for the unwashed masses.
Right.
How many have
Well,
offended that one?
Christianity is very new to the game with all this, even though we're looking at,
Yeah.
2000 years plus. You go much further back in time for some of these earlier traditions, going back, several millennia, and you can see that the traditions and the symbology of Christianity were built on top of these much older traditions.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can build on that as well. So 2 minutes, because I think I've got this. Actually, I won't, because it'll interfere with the slides. Forget it. Right. Okay. So in Mesopotamia, so one of the earliest city states that we have is Ur, Eridu, and I forgot the other one. Either way, I think it was Ur or Eridu, one of the first places that was built as part of a civilization. The first god that was worshipped there as a patron deity was Enki. So the first god that if we track the Christian, Jewish, Canaanite religion all the way back to a start point, then we can take it roughly to about 3800 BC. And we've got the initial god being Enki, who was part of a pantheon. He was the Lord God even at that point. Kind of the Lord of the earth, if you like. I mean, again, anybody who's familiar with the Sumerian traditions, Sumerian epics, that the similarities between the Bible, the Genesis specifically, and the Sumerian epics, it's off the charts. I mean, to say that it's not the same thing would be deluding yourself. But of course, we'll get accused of all sorts either way. So yeah, that's just an interesting one on Jupiter, Jove, Zeus being Yahweh. So if we take the example of Saturn, Kronos, Satan, El, Lord of the Rings, Lord of Time. And again, we've got another idea that Aphrodite becomes Ishtar. Well, sorry, Ishtar becomes Aphrodite, Astarte, Inanna. All of these different versions of the same thing, syncretized. We now get it as Venus. Again, is it astro-theological? I don't know. This is just where my research takes me. So, again, people can take this what they will. It's not intended to offend. It's intended to kind of point out the obvious in a way. So, are we ready for the next one?
Go ahead.
So, this is the one that'll trigger them. So, Jesus. So now we're dealing with New Testament, kinda. So, going back to the sun symbolism, we have the oldest version of this syncretized version of Jesus or Christ in the Bible. Goes back to Mithra. So this was a solar deity, very much linked to the whole idea of the chrism as well, but also linked to astro-theology, such as the age of Taurus, the sun, the sun in the house of Taurus, hence the sun slaying the bull, Mithra slaying the bull, being the light of the world, etc. We even have another photograph there of a carving where Mithra has the solar disc behind his head, in the same way that Jesus and the saints have the solar disc behind their heads. We have the Canaanite Samson slaying the lion, also again solar symbolism. I mean, the similarities are off the charts here. Helios, the Greek Ptolemaic Egyptian sun god. Apollo, the Greco-Roman sun god. All the symbolism is the same. Sol Invictus, the unconquerable sun, and also incidentally the chosen god of the Emperor Constantine. So when we're told that Constantine reformed Christianity and that he converted to Christianity, well, technically he didn't, because he was already worshipping the sun in the first place. So the idea of Jesus being the sun and the light of the world to Constantine, in order to, say, suppress the masses from revolt, rebellion, etc., is to basically syncretize again the two religions. Okay, well, I'll call him Jesus, but we both know that it's the unconquerable sun. There you go. So just got more examples.
Right. And also, Christianity took pagan festivals and important holidays and
Mm,
built its new traditions around them. That's why Christmas occurs at the time of the winter solstice.
yeah.
Easter is the spring equinox. So it was appeasing the older pagan traditions by still allowing them to celebrate their festivals, but also bringing in new converts to the new religion.
Mm-hmm.
By building on what was already there. And also, you get Christian churches, which were cited on important points on the Earth's energy grid where, previous monuments would have stood,
Yeah, yeah.
which would have been venerated by
Well,
pagans.
sorry to interrupt, but a good example of that is, the Pantheon in Rome. What they did is, so you had the 12 statues of 12 gods, and when Rome converted to Christianity, they basically remodeled, reshaped these statues into saints. So instead of becoming the gods, instead of being the gods in the old pagan tradition, they were just renamed saints. So we have a perfect example in the Pantheon in Rome as we speak. It's a
Right.
beautiful place, and it's an interesting one as well. But yeah, I mean, the idea that sacred temples were built on energy grids and things like that. I mean, if you walk into cathedrals, especially, I don't know whether it's just me, but I walk into these places, I think, wow, there's an energy there. There's a resonance. There's this feeling that it's just,
Yeah, I get that.
it's profound. It's beautiful. So again, I'm not opposed to going to churches and cathedrals, and I'm very respectful when I do so. But if you go into any church, just look at the stained glass windows, look at the symbolism, look at the carvings in stone, and tell me that that's not pagan symbolism. It is, and the church fathers knew this. The church itself knows this, and it's integrated everywhere. You just, I challenge anyone to go into a church and not find pagan symbolism
Right.
as part of that religion, as part of their religious holidays. Again, Christmas, the Saturnalia festival. Christ, Saint Nick, was also a reference to Satan, the devil.
Yep. One
Saturn,
and the
Satan.
same in so many cases.
Yeah, and yet, we celebrate this is potentially our greatest holiday in the in Christendom in the West. It's like, all kids are excited for this magical fella dressed in red, flying across the sky, and giving you gifts if you're good, and then punishing you and turning into this Krampus style creature if you're naughty. That just seems to be a bit of a split personality there, but I think Steve James would be very good at explaining that one better than I can, actually.
Yeah.
He's very
Should
good
do
at
a
that.
show with him, maybe.
Do you know what? Actually, I think that'd be fantastic. So I'll take you up on that, because
Get both of you on.
done, done. Why not? Spread the hate. I mean, we're going to. Why not? No, actually, seriously, that'd be good though. Again, more astro-theological references. I'm sorry, I'm just getting back to the slide there. If you look at the round table, or the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 brothers of Joseph, the 12 disciples, astro-theological references, and they all seem to embody certain elements of those houses, if you like. Just again, it's all over the place. It's replete. Even the four seasons. I mean, the four gospels, the four seasons. It's a simplistic way of looking at it, but why did the church fathers who put the Bible together in its current form, why did they decide to miss out the Apocrypha? Why did they take out the other Gospels? Why is the Gospel of Judas not in there? We know it exists. Why? But it's not just a case of missing it out. They made every effort to eradicate these other gospels, these other accounts. I mean, every time the Gnostics show up on Earth in one form or another, where any kind of Gnostic belief, it's destroyed. I mean, it's utterly annihilated. What are they hiding? What are they so afraid of? Some more Jesus symbolism there. Jesus being the Son. Again, I speak as I find the symbolisms everywhere, even in the New Testament. If you just read the accounts, just look at it objectively and say, well, could it be the Son? Just look at the wording of it. Look at the astro-theological references. Look at the personalities. Look at the acts that he's going through. The two fish, Pisces, the Lion of Judah. So the lion, Leo of Judah. Judah is another reference to the sun, the Lion of Judah. We have the Lamb of God, Aries. Springtime, Aries. It's all over the place. And if you look at it also in terms of seasonal changes and things like that, it falls bang in line with that. So what else?
Then you'd be hard pressed to find a depiction of Jesus without a light shining behind his head, as if in the form of, I don't know, the sun, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So if we look at the slide there, it's overt, mate. It's even the cross, even the one with the cross with the sun behind it. Yeah, you're right. Show me a picture of Jesus without the solar disc behind his head, and explain to me why the solar disc is there in the first place. Because this is just another example of those who know esoteric law and cultures and traditions. They know what they're talking about. You don't. I'm not trying to be derogatory with that, but come on, people. Look, we're supposed to be enlightened. We're supposed to be truthers, seeking the truth and investigating all these conspiracies. But my God, some of the stuff that we've fallen for, holy shit. Wow. I'll give you a couple
shit,
of examples.
forgive the pun.
Yeah, I didn't actually intend for that one, but I like it.
That was a George Carlin one.
Okay, so I'll give you another couple of examples. So Lucifer in the Old Testament is named Hel-El, meaning the shining Lord. A direct translation between the Latin to English, Lucifer is the bearer of light or the bringer of light. Some say that this is in reference to Venus. However, and I very much disagree with this, I would say it was the sun, not Venus. And there's a lot of other reasons for that, but that's for another presentation that I've got. It's complicated, but it's not. But I disagree. Anyway, the sun, the bright and morning star, being the biggest and brightest star in the sky, bringing us the dawning of a new day. I mean, the morning star, it's the star that comes with the morning. It's the light of the world. It's pretty obvious, and in terms of worshiping the sun, try living without it. See how far that gets you. Another quote. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, the son of the dawn, right? You have been cast down to the earth. You who once laid low the nations. Okay, so that's a reference to Lucifer in Isaiah. Apparently, this is disputed as well, by the way. Biblical scholars say that it's actually not a reference to Lucifer, that it's taken out of context and mistranslated. However, if we take that, then is that not a reference to the sun going down? In the Egyptian tradition of the Holy Trinity, we have Horus being the sun, who is the offspring of Isis and Osiris. All of it, it's a Holy Trinity there. You've got the sun in the morning, the sun at its height, and then the sun going down. So you've got sunset, Seth, the evil brother of Osiris. But it's still sun symbolism. It's just that one is the glorious sun that brings the light and life and the dawn and the daytime. And then you have its opposer, the opposite, the extreme, Seth, set, sunset, darkness.
Satan.
Satan. Again, there it is.
From Set.
And from Set, sun, and even Horus, horizon, Horus rising. The sun on the horizon. It's all then. This is the Egyptian synchronicity. Sorry, not synchronicity. Syncretism in the Bible as well. So it's taken from everything, everywhere in that particular region has been syncretized. I love it. I'm looking at this as a religion. I don't like the idea of it being a religion, but as a study, as a area of interest, my God, it's fascinating. Another one for you. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. Revelation. He's the bright and morning star. Okay. And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, which I clearly remember it being the light, but something seems to have changed, maybe a Mandela effect somewhere.
I
No
remember it
one
that
comes
way
to
as
the
well.
Father. Sorry, say that again, mate.
I remember it the same as you. So there's another one that seems to have
The,
changed.
yeah, well, I mean, the Mandela effect in and of itself is a fascinating subject, but look, they are changing. Well, I say something is changing things. I can't explain it, but I am starting to notice, and it's becoming disconcerting, actually. Just the way that these
Yeah.
things have changed. I mean, have
It
we
was
died?
definitely the way, the truth, and the light.
Yeah.
I went to
Well,
Christian church for 4 years. I know a few
exactly that.
things.
So you were baptized in the Jordan, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
you were pretty hardcore in terms of being a Christian. So you
At that
really
point
went
in
for
my
it.
life, yeah, it meant a lot
Yeah.
to me. So
And yet, so I would think that you've come away from Christianity. And again, this is not a personal dig, but I would think that you've come away from it because you've looked into it and you've seen the contradictions, you've seen the problematic explanations for things, and just thought, nah, that doesn't work.
hmm,
And if we look at the majority of biblical scholars out there who were Christian, well, now they're not. And who better than a biblical scholar who's been trained in theology for a good many years, that knows the Bible inside and out, and suddenly, they're coming out and saying, well, yeah, it's not true. It's not what we think it is.
that's
Uh,
right.
but anyway, so again, the quote, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light, or the life. No one comes through the Father except through me. So is that telling us how to get out of this place? Is that saying that somehow when we attempt to escape the matrix in death or whatever, that we head for the sun? Do we go straight for the sun to get out? I don't know.
Whatever it is, I'll take it.
I'll tell you something, mate. I ain't coming back here. Not
No
not
return
my
ticket
choice.
required, thanks.
Yeah, I do not consent. Right?
One way only.
Sod that. Another quote for you. And the great dragon was thrown down. That's ancient serpent who was called Devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth. And his angels were thrown down with him. So that's another astro-theological reference to the sun going down at night. So when the sun comes down, obviously it's lowering in the sky, it brings with it darkness. The sky gets darker, its light grows dim, and the stars are coming down with him. So, as it gets darker, you start to see the stars. There's clear astro-theology in the book of Revelation. To me, it's indisputable. But there you go. I'm sure the Christians will find error with it. And finally, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Luke. Satan fall like lightning from heaven. I wonder if maybe I've made a typo there. Maybe that's supposed to be Lucifer, but either way, I'll have to look into that one again. But Luke, there you go. Luke's another one, another reference to the sun. So the Gospel of Luke, is that referring to the summer season, the height of the sun, the height of Jesus? I don't know. It certainly looks that way. I'm going to take a little breather now. I'm going to have a little drink. So if you've got anything to add there, Mark, or any
Sure.
questions?
Well, I think we're nearly there.
Hmm.
The syncretism aspect is quite fascinating, bringing together all these different things. And it just makes sense of so much when you see it all laid out
Yeah.
there. You see all these different names and you realize it's the same entity, and you realize what they've done in bringing all these things together and overlaying them on top of other traditions that were there before. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating stuff. And it can make sense of things that have been with you all your life, but until
Hmm.
they're pointed out to you, you don't see it. It takes somebody breaking down what has been right in front of your nose all these years. And then
Yeah.
suddenly you see it so clearly. And then you never go back to those old ways of seeing the world and those old belief systems.
Saying that, I know some people that have, and
I
it's
don't
very
know how you
bizarre.
can.
Well, no, this is the thing. I mean, is this people that do go back into this delusional mindset? I mean, are we dealing
Are
with
they
mental
seeking
illness? You know?
comfort? Are they
Yes. Yeah.
forcing themselves to believe what they once did because they found solace in that?
Mm.
And this new way of seeing things is just too horrific for them to contemplate, that they can't entertain it. So they're deliberately deluding themselves again. I just don't know how you can do that.
Well, I can't personally, because I like to think that I'm a rational human being that can look at things discerningly, and if I mean, look, if you can't admit that you've been wrong, then you can't move on, right? So I like to take the information as it comes, assess it, analyze it, put it into a compartment, say it might be or it might not be. But then you wait for the evidence to come in, and if the evidence is there, then you kind of go with it. That's the way I see it. I'll
Yeah.
give you just when you were saying there, this comfort thing, this idea of comfort. A Christian friend of mine, I think he's actually starting to come away from it. I might be wrong, but I was having this discussion with him in his car, and he said, "Look, mate," he said, "Why, why all these attacks on God?" I said, "Well, okay, I'll answer that." I said, "But why do you feel it necessary to stick to this religion, this belief?" And he thought for a little while, and he said, "It's the fear of death." I thought, that's interesting, right? So it's the fear of not knowing what comes after this. And so if somebody comes along and convinces you that actually this is what happens after death because this person said that and we agree with it, and then you start teaching that. It's almost like saying, well, if I'm a good boy, when I die, I'll go to a good place. Or in some Christian traditions, when you die, that's it, you're dead. You get resurrected in 1,000 years' time, but you have a great sleep, you have a long sleep. But to me, it's almost like we can't quite handle reality. It's the idea that I need comfort because this is a cold, hard, nasty, evil world, and I need some kind of promise that actually it will end one day and everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be all right. But whilst we've got that mindset that, oh, well, everything's going to be all right in the afterlife, well, we're letting this place literally go to hell. We should be concentrating on the here and now. We're here now. Let's fix this,
That's
and then
right.
worry about what comes next. That's my mindset for that. But
Well, I think this would be a good place to start to wrap up because we're about
yeah,
2
yeah,
hours on this one. But let me put this question to you.
yeah.
Where is the solace to be found in looking at the world in this new way? Some of the things we've discussed in this podcast, because I think there's
Right.
some to be found,
Yeah.
and I've got my own ideas on it. But if somebody has listened to everything you've had to say and they've listened to maybe my God videos and they think, oh my God, this is such a nihilistic worldview.
Hmm.
Where's the hope in this? Uh, what's the point in carrying on? Uh, what would be your answer to that? Where is any positivity to be found in reassessing your worldview to take on these new ways of looking at things?
Right. Okay. That one's quite simple actually, because it's a question that I ask myself quite a lot. Is, well, if you take away the existing comforts because they're not true, and you've got to face up to reality. All right. So let's look at this as an exercise in maturity. Let's look at it as growing up. All right. Yes, it's cold and nasty out there, but it can be changed. But it can only be changed with the application of will and action. Right. So you've got to say, right, well, that's clearly not the case. This is what we're looking at. If we want to change this, if we want to be productive and evolve consciousness or spirituality, or however you want to look at it, then we do it now, right? So the idea of letting go of illusions, letting go of false beliefs. In fact, I would argue, let go of all beliefs. Full stop. All belief is mind control. Let it go, right? You either know something or you don't. You can have an opinion on something, but it doesn't mean you've got to believe it, right? So dispense with all that old stuff. Look at this objectively, look at where we are, right? This is not necessarily a negative thing. This could be the most productive, positive thing in human history, is to look at the problems straight in the face and just say, right, we need to fix this. And you cannot fix it whilst you're stuck in a belief system that's saying, don't worry, the Messiah is going to save you, everything's fine. How many different savior figures do they want? Do they want Trump to come and save them? Do they want the white hats to come and say, come on, please, people, get a grip? You do it. You do it. If you're here and you can see the problem, then it's your problem, right? So if it's something that you can fix, then it's your responsibility to fix it. If it's something that's out of your control, then it's more a case of a societal change, right? So that comes later, but it can only be positive. I mean, it's like coming out of a mental illness, right? So if you think that you've had this trauma all your life, and then suddenly you've figured out how to, you're exercising, you're getting endorphins running, your brain's starting to focus more, you get clarity, and you start to feel better, and you think, oh, right, okay, well, that's better than it was, right? So then you start becoming productive. And so the positive to take from this is a mythology. just the same as the Roman mythology, in the Egyptian mythology, in the Hindu mythology, and all that. It's a mythology, it's an idea, it's a philosophy of the mind to try and explain how things work and why they happen the way they do. But that doesn't make it, and pardon the pun, gospel. That doesn't make it the truth. Just because you like the idea of it doesn't mean it's true, you know? So the positives to take from this is, if we allow ourselves to embrace this, and yeah, it's going to be tough. It's already tough. But we can make it better. We can embrace it and absolutely thrive on this. But you've got to dispense with the old shit and grow up. You've got to mature. You've got to mature spirit, body, and mind. All of it together, combined. That's a true awakening.
Yeah.
How's that?
That's a pretty good answer. And that pretty much chimes with the way I feel about things as well.
Yeah,
So you are currently preparing a book. I think you're
I am.
pretty far down the road with that, very close to finishing. So a lot
Yeah,
of what we've spoken about today is going in the book. Just tell the listeners a bit more about what they can expect from that. Has it got a title?
it does.
When do you expect it to be out?
Well, okay. So it's I'm 140,000 words in, so it's quite the body of work. It's not quite finished, and when I've been putting it together, which I've been hammering away at pretty much for the last couple of months, it's going to be at least a 2-volume, right? So this is going to be a 2-parter. So what it looks at is the state of the truth movement. So what I've done is delved into psychology. I've looked at all different psychologies, all different sociologies, and I've tried to figure out what the hell is going wrong here. So I've linked that in with psyops. I've assessed a few psyops, which I include QAnon in that. That's a massive psyop. I include the whole manifestation New Age movement as a psyop, and I include Christianity as a psyop. Not specifically picking on Christianity, because I think all religion is a psyop. But the idea of the book is to say, right, this is the current state of things. This is why we are in this predicament, and this is the solution. So unlike a lot of people out there, I actually think that I've got a fair few solutions to this, and it's not what people think it is. And again, I'm not going to give the game away. I will, once the book's published, we can discuss it. But there are some very real solutions, and actually most of them are very easy, very, very easy, and it's overlooked because of the simplicity of it. So there you go. So it's an analysis of let's say modern day society, but specifically with an emphasis on the truth movement. And it's got a massive section on this particular presentation that we've gone through today. That's in the book, and it's a huge chapter, and it goes into more quotes and arguments, and it's expansive, and it's got plenty of references in there for people to delve into. There you go.
What's it called?
I'm going to keep that under wraps for now. It does have a name, which I think you've seen through the examples I've given. I'm going to keep it under wraps for now, because I want to announce that at a later date. But it's let's just say it's no, leave that one for now.
All right. Okay.
So, it will be revealed, and I mean it's there. I mean, obviously I can send you a copy of it and you can read it, but I want to announce that later. So I'm going to stop waffling at that point.
So you delivered this talk at Gosforth recently.
Yes.
Have you got any more live dates, live presentations coming up?
Yeah, I've got Truth Seekers Northeast, hopefully in the middle of next month. I've not yet confirmed a date because I'm trying to work out logistics. I've done a few presentations now, so the idea of me doing public talks is completely alien. It's an alien concept, but apparently I'm good at it. So okay,
as terrifying as it used to be.
Oh, it's still terrifying. I mean, I'm sat here kind of it's kind of, I'm out of my comfort zone completely, but I do what I do because I can see a problem. I do what I do because of people like Mark Passio. He says, unless you're actively doing something, putting something out into the world, you're part of the problem. And I looked at myself internally, and I kind of come to the assessment that, look, he's right. And if I don't do anything, then I am the problem. So then it's up to me now to present what I've come across, what I know, to the best of my ability. And so it just seems to have happened naturally, actually. I mean, I was invited to do a talk at the Porcupine before it was closed down. And, I filled the room, and actually the praise that I got from it is fantastic. And if you want to have a look at that particular presentation, I've got a BitChute channel under the name of Veritas Mundi, which was named after the conferences that I put on a couple of years back.
Not Rex Mundi.
Not Rex Mundi. No, no, no. Let's not go for that one. That was King of the World. No, no. Sackless, the blind god. No. So Veritas Mundi literally translates to world truth, or the world of truth, which is another Latin phrase. And if you're interested, go along to there and you can see the recording of it. It's not the best recording, but it's you can hear it and see the slides. There you go.
All right. Okay. Well, amazing conversation today.
Cheers, mate.
And
Thank you very
we'll have
much.
some more. We'll definitely have to do another show. Maybe get Steve James along, and we can,
Oh,
bash
you know
heads
what? I think
between
the
the
pair
three of
of us
us.
would love that.
Yeah,
That'd be very good.
yeah.
So just one more word before we go is that if I have triggered Christians, if I have offended you, ask yourself, why are you offended? What is it in your belief system that I've managed to offend? Because actually, you'll probably find it's not me offending you; it's you in a state of cognitive dissonance that's unable to accept the new information. Look into it. Look into it. Just have a look at it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if you're wrong, at least have the truthfulness and the oh, I'm losing my words here. Just accept it. Be honest.
Maturity.
Have some integrity, maturity. Yeah, I'm not. This is not a deliberate dig at people, Mark, and I don't think you're doing it to deliberately offend either. But
No, I'm not.
is it not our job to point things out? Is this not what truthers do, to investigate?
Taking offense is a choice. It's a personal
Right,
choice.
it is. So I choose not. But unfortunately, other people are still not quite there yet.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it there today, mate. Thanks for
Thanks
coming
very
on.
much, Mark.
All right.
Cheers, buddy.